Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing advanced strategies to tackle the Vancouver International Wine Festival. So each year I usually do a video about the International Wine Festival, kind of highlight which are the best wines. And this year I'm going to do a little different. I'm going to give you some advanced strategies. You know, a lot of my viewers and subscribers, like myself, have been to the International Wine Festival every year for the last 5 or 6 years or maybe 10 years, and we want to change it up a little bit. I thought it's kind of a bit more interesting to do it a different way this year. So that's what I'm going to do. When we talk about going to wine festivals, any wine festival is having a plan. And so this year what I'm talking about is a more advanced strategy. So there's kind of two schools of thoughts here. I think what you should do is basically either what they call trophy hunt and just drink really high value wines, or else you drink what they call specialty wines, which is wines that you can't find in the market. So there's reasons for both of these, because I guess the rational basis is if you're going to the wine festival and you usually buy a lot of wine in BC, a lot of these wines that you'll taste, you'll be able to buy. So it's not really that special. You might be able to taste them anyways. You might be able to buy them yourself. What you want to really do is try those wines that you would never normally get to try, whether it be because of the price or whether it because of the selection that we don't get. And the nice thing is that with the International Wine Festival, they typically, whatever wines that they serve in the tasting room, they will have on sale in the store at the wine festival. So it's one of these unique situations where you could actually buy it or taste it first and then buy it. And so this is the two strategies. So I'm going to talk about these two advanced strategies. So the first advanced strategy is to just drink trophy wines. And those are really high value wines. You look out for the top value wines out there. And where do you go for these? You go for mostly the champagnes, and I'll highlight a couple of other tables where they're high value wines. The problem being is that generally agents, and in this particular case at the Vancouver International Wine Festival, a lot of them are principals, are not going to take a liking to you just cherry picking and just saying, please go to this wine. So what strategy I would say is, I don't think it's necessary to go through all the wines in the table. Typically, they'll have between 4 to 6 wines in the tables. But I think it is good etiquette to at least try a couple of wines before you go to the trophy wine. And so it's not as obvious. So I think that's really etiquette. At least take another 2 wines at the table, talk to the person at the table, and then go to the trophy wine. But you do have to identify which one are the high value wines. So I'm going to go through the wines that are listed in the tasting booklet, and this is for general information too. It's nice to kind of identify what they call trophy or high value wines without really knowing the price. And there's some kind of telltale signs. There's some wines that I just know, but I'll try and give you some advice on that. Not going through the sake. There's a great sake section in the wine festival, so I'm not going to deal with that because I'm not a sake expert, but in general, there's some really nice stuff there that you could taste too. So the first is going to be booth number 11. It's Barossa Valley Estate. They're serving their E&E Black Pepper Shiraz 2021. That's always over $100 wine. And then if you're going to try there's lots of great stuff in that booth to try. The Shiraz, the Cabernet Sauvignon, the GSM, which is the Grenache, Syrah Mourvedre, Cabernet Shiraz. They're all very good wines. So the quality of that booth is actually very good. So I would go there. In the BC section, booth number 32, they have Mission Hill, and they're serving their Compendium, which is not their top-end wine. Their top-end wine is called Oculus, but Compendium is over $100 a bottle too. And they're serving other stuff, their Reserve Meritage, Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc, Reserve Brut, non-vintage Chardonnay, Reserve Chardonnay. So these are all when generally Reserve would denote a kind of mid-level wine, there's probably a regular Chardonnay. Regular Chardonnay, I would guess, in the $20, $30 range. These ones are probably going to be in the $40 to $60 range, and the Compendium is $100. So that's not a bad table to go to either. Next table I'm going to suggest is table number 64. It's the Famille Caz from Bordeaux, and then they also have some Languedoc and Roussillon wines. Languedoc Roussillon I think is a great value region, so this is a very interesting table that can go for both strategies, the wines that you think are trophy value and the wines that are kind of not usually available in liquor stores. So on this table, the interesting wine is Chateau Ormez de Pez 2019 from Saint Estèphe. That is a winery owned by the same people as Chateau Lynch-Bache. It's usually around between $75 to $100 a bottle here, so that's a good bottle, like a high-end bottle. They've got some other stuff that's interesting. They've got Pauillac de Lynch-Bache, which I think is the second or third wine of Lynch-Bache. Still pretty expensive bottle, like $100 a bottle. So that's an interesting wine to taste. And then they've got some rosé wines from the Roussillon region. So that's interesting too. So table 68 or booth 68, this is Champagne du Val-Leroy. So champagne is never expensive. So just by the nature of champagne is going to be minimum $65 a bottle. So anything on this table is going to be good. And then you have different things here. You have the Reserve non-vintage, and then you have the Premier Cru non-vintage. So any champagne on this table is going to be high value and of quite a good quality. So I would go to that table also and drink with confidence. This table I would highlight is 78, which is Domaine La Roche. They also have wineries in Bourgogne and also Languedoc, so Burgundy and Languedoc, Roussillon. So a couple of things you're looking for here. One thing, the major wine that I would like to probably try here is the Grand Cru Chablis Les Blanchots 2022. So again, Grand Cru, this is a defined term in the Chablis region. So it's going to denote the best vineyard sites, and therefore it's going to be the most expensive. So that's going to be a wine that's going to be probably going to be over $100 a bottle. And then they've got other stuff here. They've got a Premier Cru Chablis, which you could try, and then they have some entry-level Chablis. So they've got a lot of different levels of Chablis. They've got some Pinot Noir, so that is another great table to try. And the last table I'm going to highlight is Pfaff, which is table number 83 from Alsace. In North America, when we say things like reserve, it may not mean a lot. In Europe, when they say things like Grand Cru, Premier Cru, generally speaking, it means something, and it means a higher level of quality or a higher, a better vineyard site, which probably denotes a higher priced wine. And so again, in here you see a Grand Cru. You see the Chateau de Ricoeur, a Grand Cru Sonnenberg 2020 Riesling. That's going to be, I would guess, over $100 bottle of wine. They've got a Gewürztraminer there. It's very interesting. They've got another Pinot Gris from Steinert, which is 2017, which is also Grand Cru. They've got a Gewürztraminer from the same region, that's Grand Cru. So they've got a lot of Grand Cru wines, which means these are top quality of Alsace, and I would try those out. And again, this works for both if you're looking at trophy wines and wines you normally couldn't get in our marketplace. These are not wines that you're going to get to try every day, and so again, if you like them, you can go purchase them. Before I go through my second strategy as to finding unique wines, one of the unique things about BC liquor stores, the International Wine Festival tasting room, is that they have a liquor store that's attached to the wine tasting room. And generally speaking, most of the wines served inside the tasting room are on sale in that liquor store, about 2 cases of each, something like that. And sometimes they spread it over a couple of nights. They don't put all of it out on the first night. Having said that, so there's 2 kind of advanced strategies. The first one, which I used to do, is actually pre-look at the wines that are going to be served in the booklet, and the booklet is actually online already, so you can download it and figure out what wines are being served, and then actually look at which ones that you want to buy, or which ones are highly rated, and then go to the liquor store first, even before you go to the tasting room. And so, everyone does the opposite. They actually go and taste everything, they take notes, and then at the end of the night at 9 o'clock, they go to the liquor store, and then they find out that everything's been sold out. The better way, if you actually know what you're tasting, is to actually go at the beginning. So basically, don't just buy all your wines first, then you have your time to taste. So it's kind of going backwards, which is against the flow, which is a good way of doing it. The second way is basically, which I've also done in the past, is to taste wines. And once you taste the wine that you like, to go right away and go buy it. There is in and out privileges. So the liquor store is just right next to the tasting room, and it's just a turnstile. So they will stamp your hand and basically they'll let you back in. So you could do that multiple times. They don't care. So, and every time you do that, you can actually, you don't have to take the wines, you can have them delivered to the liquor store nearest to you. And the beautiful thing is they'll deliver 1 bottle or 2 bottles or 6 bottles. It doesn't have to be a full case. So every time you can just have 1 bottle, 2 bottles. You could do that. And I've done that before where I've actually went back multiple times and bought, maybe not every booth, but every 4 or 5 booths that I get to that I really like, then I'll go and I have, these 4 wines I'd like, I go to the liquor store, try to see if they're still available, and if they are, then I buy them and then come back into the room. It also gives you a nice break from tasting, so I think I really recommend that strategy also. The second strategy you could use for the wine tasting room is to just go for those wines that you actually don't get a chance to try normally in BC. And that's the rationale there, is that you get to try certain wines and buy certain wines that you would not normally have to taste. So it's no use going to the International Wine Festival tasting room and recognizing wines. Oh, I love that wine, and tasting that wine. You already know you love that wine. You want to taste things that you never normally taste. And every year, the International Wine Festival has a theme country, and this year is France. So therefore, you probably want to taste French wines because that's going to be the greatest selection. You take advantage because a lot of those booths will not be back in further years. So let's see, the first example is Table 75. This is Gabriel Maffra from the Rhone and Burgundy region. I've actually never seen their wines in liquor stores. So this would be a wine that is very unique, and they also have a Gigondas. I would go for more wines that I've never heard of, like this is Pen de Deux, this is Vacaras. These are more obscure wine regions. Bordeaux, you see a lot of. So Rhone, you see a lot of. So I'm not as interested in those wines because you see a lot of selection of that. You want to go to things that you actually don't get a chance to taste very often. One of the ones in here that's really interesting to me is a producer called Nicolas Potel, and it's their Chablis 2023. I don't think I've ever seen it in liquor stores. And Nicolas Potel is a very good producer. So that would be a wine that I'd be interested in tasting. So the heart of the booths will be in booths 59 to about 5, which are all the French wine booths. And so that's really where you should pay a lot of your attention to. So another winery that I would highlight is 62, which is Brumont. This is Chateau Montes, which I've seen at Chateau Boucasse. This is from southwest France. And they've got a lot of different varieties of Montes, which I don't see a lot. I've seen their Maturin, but I haven't seen Le Tir before. So these are the type of wines that I would think of. Also, their Chateau Boucasse, which is from the Maturin region for the 2017 vintage. They've also got a 2015, which is it looks like almost like a label that I don't normally see. So that would be a very interesting for me to try. Couple other ones. Booth 67. I know I said you should stay away from Bordeaux, but this is an exception because there's a wine called Domaine de Compostelle from Pomerol. I've never heard of this winery. Pomerol is a high value region. Love to see if I can get some value in Pomerol. So that would be an interesting wine for me to try. They've also got another wine, Chateau Chevet, from the Entre-deux-Mers region. Again, we don't get a lot from that region. We don't get a lot from Côte de Blay, which is also a minor region in Bordeaux. These are interesting wines that you can try. In addition, in that booth, they have Chateau Pédescal, which is one of my favorite wines because that's how I got started in wines. For those people who don't know the story, one of the first wines I ever bought after getting into wines and getting a little bit of money was Chateau Pédescal. I went to the liquor store. That was the only wine left after the release. It was like $105 20 or 25 years ago. Really expensive wine for probably the most expensive wine I've ever bought at that time. Beautiful bottle. It said Grand Cru on it, Grand Cru Classé. It was like, wow, it's got to be good. I went home and researched it, and they said this is probably of the 1855 classification system wines is probably one of the worst or the least performing wines out there. Now, I can tell that story today because Chateau Patiscal has actually done very well in the last little while and actually is a very respectable winery now. But at that time, they were going through some difficulties, and I was like, that's how I got into wines, because I was so frustrated. It's like, how did I get kind of fooled about that? And subsequently, every time I bought a wine, I would go home and research it, and it's like I got fooled again. And that's how it kind of fueled me to know more about wine. 71 is another booth that I would just visit. Fonioja Delta, never heard of it, from Languedoc-Roussillon. That's what you want to try. Stuff that you've never heard of, you probably will never see again in the market. And this is your chance to kind of try them out, and if they're good, to buy their bottles. So they've got Expression de Sud Rouge. So a southern France rosé. That'd be interesting. They've got Terra Libra, a Grenache, a Grand Velour Chardonnay, and a Rouge. So these are very, in my mind, more obscure kind of wines that you'll never see. And that's kind of the use of the wine festival, to try stuff that you'll never see again. And they don't have to be expensive stuff. It could be very value oriented. Winemakers or people from wine, the winery itself will be there, representatives there, so you can have a personal interaction, and when you serve this wine again, or when you drink it again, you remember that personal connection. And again, I highlight table 83 with Sfaf. That's from the Alsace region. Alsace wines are like, white wines are spectacular. The red wines are okay, the Pinots are okay, but their white wines are unbelievable. Unbelievable price points, and at the Grand Cru level are stunning. So this is a winery that you should visit, both if you're looking for trophy wines, that high-end wines, or really unique wines. Pfaff and Pfaffenheim have lots of wines that are kind of more entry level in the BC liquor stores, but I don't see their Grand Cru stuff that much. It's fairly allocated, and the wines that they're serving have some age on them. Their 2017 Pinot Gris Grand Cru and Gewürztraminer Grand Cru. These are really interesting wines, both for trophy wine hunters and also for people that are just starting out. These are great wines to drink. 3 other advanced strategies, some of them I've talked about in previous years. The first one is, the key is to try to find strategies where you're kind of going against the grain. So everyone, the wine festival starts at 7 o'clock, everyone gets there at 6:30, you line up for half an hour, you don't get in till 7:15 or something like that. And whereas, maybe if you start a little bit later, like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, there's no lineup. And also, the beauty is that a lot of people after around 9 o'clock are almost done. And so if you actually start a little bit later, you actually get not as much. First of all, you don't have to line up to get in. And then secondly, you actually get a better experience at the drinking tables. Now, the only caveat to that is if you go too late, like I've tried that before, where I said, oh, let's go at 9 o'clock and then drink till 10. A lot of times, a lot of the booths might have run out of wine, or they might have just packed up because there's so few people that are still interested. So I think a good time is 8, at the latest 8:30 to enter. But if you enter a little bit later, you actually do a little bit better because everyone else is kind of done. By about 9 o'clock, everyone is really kind of finished drinking or going to the dessert wines or going to the sake. And so there's not as much of a lineup, and therefore you get more use of your time. The second strategy that I've talked about before is, which I think it's always good, is that you should go and prepare. Preparation is always key when you go to these wine festivals. Going in there and, oh, I don't know what's happening. So you can easily prepare. And the nice thing about the Vancouver International Wine Festival is they always publish the booklet beforehand online. And so that's the great thing, that you can actually already see what wines are available, where they're located. And in previous years, I've done a map. This year, I'm not going to do that. But that's one thing that you can also do. Just prepare in advance and then have a game plan of which wineries you're going to go to, not just like, oh, I don't know what's here. It's very disorienting when you go there. I remember my first year going there. It was so, I just didn't know how many wineries there were. I didn't know which rows were things. It's very, very disorienting for the first time person. And so it's better to plan ahead. And the last one is kind of unique for this year because they have set up this year regional tasting stations and wine bars. And so they've set up quite a few of them. They've put up Vive the French, which has a tour of all of French wines. They have New Zealand wines, Beaujolais, which you can dig into the diversity of Beaujolais, Bubbles, the Art of Bordeaux, California. So you could basically just sit at these tasting stations and wine bars and taste a very good selection of wines without going anywhere else. So that's something I'm going to try this year because it's actually much more cost-effective time. You probably have a better time and you have a wide selection. And remember we were talking about, oh, maybe sometimes you want a trophy pick and you don't have. This is a lot better because you have a huge selection of wines that you can actually pick from, not just 6 wines. And so I would suggest that the ones that I would be interested in, I know a lot about Bordeaux, so I would probably go there anyways, but I would start with the Bubbles, then I would probably go to Vive de France, and then if I have time, go to the other ones. But you can cover a lot there. So that's kind of my advanced plan for this year, is to either get there a little bit later, then, or if you're going to go there right at 7 o'clock, go to the regional tasting stations first because they won't be as crowded, I think. They'll go to Bubbles first, then go to Vive de France, then maybe go to Art of Bordeaux. That should take you around an hour, hour and a half. When you're finished there, then go to the tasting room and then go with the 2 strategies, whether you're going for the trophy wines or you're going for the wines that you don't see in BC, and go through those, but primarily focus on France because that is the region where all the wineries are coming from this year. Hope this has been useful. Hope you have a great time at the International Wine Festival. I will be there Thursday and Friday night, maybe even Saturday night. I might be at some of the media tastings. I'm at a couple of the seminars. So if any of my viewers and subscribers see me there, just say hi. I'm assuming you actually like what I do. So if you don't, then probably don't say hi, but just be nice. Don't shout at me, please. Just come up and say hi, and maybe we can have a drink together. We'll see what happens. I'm drinking with subscribers and friends all throughout that weekend, and so there's lots of events and lots of opportunities to drink, and love to meet up with viewers and subscribers. Just don't attack me, please. Don't be drunk when you're talking to me. Please try to be a little bit coherent. I'll try to be coherent, and we'll go from there. But it's a really fun time. It's a really fun, it's a really exciting time for wine drinkers, and it's all about just sharing and enjoying the wines and everyone else's company. Again, hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy drinking.